In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Office of the Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, Quaid-i-Azam University, we are most grateful for your joining us and cordially welcome you all to the special webinar on Kashmir conflict in the post-August 2019 scenario. Before we begin our webinar, allow me to make some logistical announcements. For our learned audience who is joining us via Facebook, there are 3 Facebook links that are available for you to watch this special webinar online, real time live. One is Facebook page QAU 50. The second is QAU Islamabad official. And the third is our partner organization and co-host that is joining us, that is FM channel Power 99, run by Mr. Najib. Simultaneously, we also have our partner organization, the PTV World, which is going to play the recording and special moments of this particular webinar for us. And we are extremely grateful to our partner organizations for helping us out to run this wonderful seminar as we speak. Today marks a new milestone in the dauntless and courageous struggle by the Muslims of the illegally annexed and occupied territories of Jammu and Kashmir by India. A year back, not only the special status accorded to the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir was unilaterally revoked by Delhi, but it also imposed the world's longest curfew on the natives of the Sublime Valley, which is a blatant violation of basic human rights. To dwell further on this critical issue, I invite the Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, Quaid-i-Azam University, Professor Dr. Nazir Hussain Sahab, to formally initiate this webinar.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I welcome all the distinguished panelists, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, and especially I'm grateful to Madam Mazari for providing us an opportunity, giving us time out of her very busy schedule. Justice Saab, Ambassador Khokar Saab, Ambassador Arif Kamal Saab, Dr. Raja Keyser Saab, Justice Gillani Saab for sparing their very valuable time. I'm grateful to our partners, PTV World, Power 99, and the Facebook audience. Assalamu alaikum. I would not be dwelling much on these issues because the panelists have much more insightful thoughts and discourses than me. So I welcome all. And I look forward for a very constructive dialogue. And we have tried to construct this dialogue that it would not be repetitive. So we have allocated few topics to distinguished panelists to focus on those, except for Dr. Mazari. She will be speaking on different aspects of this post-August 2019 scenario, what actually happens. But in order not to be repetitive, our distinguished panelists would be focusing on the topics given. And I welcome again all panelists and look forward for a very constructive dialogue. My Vice Chancellor, our Vice Chancellor is not being connected, unfortunately. As soon as he joins us, he'll be giving his insightful whenever is required. Thank you, Dr. Salma.
Yes, sir. I'll take over, sir. Thank you so much, sir. With that, I would now like to extend the formal invitation to our chief guest for the day, the Honorable Federal Minister for Human Rights, Dr. Shireen M. Mazari. Dr. Mazari holds a bachelor's in honors from the London School of Economics and a master's, MPhil, and a PhD from Columbia University in New York, USA. He has served previously as the Director General of the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, and as well as the Strategic Studies Institute, Islamabad, which he helped set up as the DG and the CEO. She has been a regular columnist for the main English dailies, such as the Daily Times, the Daily Nation, editor-in-chief and publisher of Pulse Weekly, and she has also authored a book on Kargil conflict, which was one of the pioneering studies of Kargil conflict from the Pakistani perspective. Our very personal connection to Dr. Mazari is that she has been the Chairperson and Associate Professor at the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies, Islamabad. Madam, the floor is yours, kindly. Thank you.
Thank you, Salma. Bismillah ar-Rahman Rahim. I would prefer to have just been introduced as an academic who has worked on these issues for a very long time, but anyhow. And it's good to see so many old friends in this webinar. I just want to start off that 5th August, of course, 2019 was the annexation and the beginning of the siege launched by the fascist Modi government on Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And subsequently, we have seen an upping of the ante by the same occupation government in IOJK with the attempts to change the demography. But we should not forget that the human rights violations and the repression against the Kashmiri people in occupied Jammu and Kashmir did not begin with this annexation. They've been ongoing for decades by the Indian occupation forces, whether it was violence against the Kashmiris, whether it was killings, enforced disappearances, rape being used as a weapon of war. After all, we had the Peshpora and Kunan incidents in February 1991. And there were incidents before that as well. There was Mubina Ghani in 1990 and so on. And pellet guns were being used against women and children much before of 5th August 2019. What has changed though is the qualitative nature of the dispute. Because when an occupation force, an occupation power tries to alter the status of the occupying territory, then it falls within the ambit of war crimes according to the 4th Geneva Convention and of course the Hague Conventions as well. So in that sense, then the Kashmir dispute acquired a qualitative change, because if you read all of the international law that exists, you find that occupying powers have to follow international law and conventions, especially those that they are party to. And once the Modi government broke those laws and conventions, then we have, of course, we have the Hague regulations, Articles 42 to 56. We have the 4th Geneva Convention, especially Articles 27 to 34 and 47 to 78. I won't, of course, go into them. And we also have certain provisions in the Additional Protocol 1 and, of course, customary international humanitarian law. And then, of course, we have the overriding UN Security Council resolutions dealing specifically with Kashmir. And I also want to point out one other thing, that the Indian argument that has constantly been given to us, that somehow because India held sham elections in the IOJK, so somehow the issue of self-determination was not relevant anymore under the UN Security Council resolutions. That is in fact not correct. And I think that for decades we have been wanting in our diplomacy, there's been this big sort of gap where we have not pushed or drawn attention to the fact that there are two UN Security Council resolutions. One is, of course, the 1951 resolution number 91 of the Security Council, and the second is UN Security Council resolution 122 of 1957, both of which categorically state that holding elections is no substitute. In other words, it says that it would not constitute a disposition of the state in accordance with the above principle, that is of self-determination through plebiscite. So let's be very clear. There is nothing that India has done, including its sham elections, that undermine or damage what the UN Security Council resolutions say, which is specifically that there should be a plebiscite to be held under the UN mandate. So that's the other point that I thought is worth clarifying. Now then we come to a very important issue. What can one do now? We continue to see abuse. It's been a year of the siege and the annexation. We've had multiple human rights organizations from Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, and so on, all pointing out and highlighting Indian violations of international law, Indian abuse of humanitarian law, and Indian repression of the Kashmiri people, including women, children, youth, being taken to far-flung prisons in India, and so on. We have also seen an outcry over the demographic changes that India is trying to bring about by giving domicile to Indian Hindu citizens, giving domicile of Kashmiri domicile to them, trying to upset the population balance. And if you look at the ICJ advisory opinion on the wall that Israel erected in Palestine, you will see that this is also a war crime, as it is under the 4th Geneva Convention and the Hague regulations. So why then do we still have an international community of states that is not moving to either put sanctions on India or to penalize India for the gross and blatant violations that it's conducting? Why is the voice of the Kashmiris not being heard? Why is India being allowed to continue with its human rights violations? This is the question that really needs to be examined. Are we doing enough? For example, I think the Prime Minister, Imran Khan, put forward a very strong narrative on Kashmir, linking the fascist Modi regime with the Nazis. And that narrative effectively has destroyed the Indian narrative that used to continue about militants and so on. Now, having established the new narrative, Pakistan having gained points on this narrative, having found it acceptable to the international media, to human rights organizations, to the UN. I mean, you know, we've had two very strong UN High Commissioner for Human Rights offices reports on Kashmir. So where have we then failed, or why are we not being able to get more movement from states vis-a-vis ostracizing India, isolating India, bringing in sanctions against India? That, I think, is the question that really needs to be answered. For example, the OIC, barring a few individual states like Iran, Turkey, or Malaysia, the rest of the OIC has kind of dithered on coming out openly. Countries that have strong trading relations have not imposed any sanctions either. And this is the problem. I think we have failed to carry forward the strong narrative and the strong position that the Prime Minister has taken over this last year. And consistently, he has put out tweets regularly, he has given statements. He, of course, his powerful message at the UN General Assembly last year. All this, but it needs a follow-up, institutional follow-up from MOFA, from other institutions within Pakistan. For example, our Human Rights Ministry wrote letters to the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. We wrote to 18 special rapporteurs on human rights. And now they've, in fact, if you look in the news, they have finally issued a statement, very strong statement, questioning what India is doing and condemning the human rights violations that India is carrying out in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. But the Secretary General has given statements. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has come out very strongly condemning what India is doing. But the point is, why have we not managed to gather enough support for getting the UN Human Rights Council to set up an investigation commission to go and see what is happening in occupied Jammu and Kashmir vis-a-vis human rights violations? This is one of the recommendations in both the human rights reports that have come out of the High Commissioner's office. And I think there is a bit of a psychological problem that because many years ago we failed to get a resolution in support of Kashmir at the UN Human Rights Council, we now live in that fear, so we're not even trying to move in that direction. But the ground realities have changed. The narrative now is different. Modi government stands exposed. So it's a different situation, and we need to recognize the ground realities have altered in perceptions of India. In fact, for the first time, we are finding Indian voices from India being raised against what the fascist Modi government is doing in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So with that sort of groundswell, with the change in the international environment, we have to push more actively towards getting a resolution. I mean, if Burkina Faso can muster up enough support for a session on Black Lives Matter against the US, it boggles the mind why our diplomats are unable to get a UN Human Rights Council session on what India is doing, the human rights violations of India in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. After all, the European Union has, for the first time, held hearings on this issue. We've had British parliamentarians speaking up. We've had the EU take note of it. But we have to plug. And the other thing that we are not doing is, at the end of the day, yes, it is a political dispute. And we also need to, by the way, keep re-emphasizing that India took the dispute to the UN under Chapter 6 of the Charter, which means it recognized that it was a dispute between Pakistan and India, two members of the UN, and was asking for a Pacific settlement of that dispute. It was not naming Pakistan as an aggressor state, which it could have done if it had gone under Chapter 7. That's another point, just by the way, that we do need to emphasize, because we kind of tend to forget these little nuances and little points of international law that we should use more effectively, which are there for us to use more effectively. Also, I think that at the end of the day, as I said, yes, it's a political issue about self-determination. And I also want to point out again that this assumption that after 9/11, the principle of self-determination and struggles for self-determination went by the wayside and were not acceptable, it's absolutely incorrect. Just let me give you one example, which I keep citing, and I think our diplomats need to cite it more, and that is the Almaty Declaration of 4th June 2002, which again emphasized the principle of self-determination as being a valid principle against foreign occupation. And not only a valid principle, the Almaty Declaration, which by the way both India and Pakistan signed, stated that this principle must be exercised, and I quote, in accordance with the UN Charter and international law, end quote, and non-fulfillment of this will pose a threat, and I quote, to regional and international peace, end quote. So here we are, the right and the principle of self-determination is still there. So that political aspect of the dispute is still legitimate, and we have to keep pursuing it. But beyond that, there is the human rights issue. It is, after all, an issue of the violence, the aggression that is being done against innocent Kashmiris, whether it's women, whether it's children, whether it's youth. And that issue needs to be taken up, especially the issue of rape as a weapon of war. There have been two international criminal tribunals, one for Yugoslavia, one for Rwanda, in which they conceded that rape is used by forces as a weapon of war. And we know that, and it's recorded, that the Indian security forces, the occupation forces, have been doing that in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. But we have not really even looked at the issue of seeking a international criminal tribunal for occupied Jammu and Kashmir and Indian violations of human rights and rape and mass killings and an attempt at genocide of the Kashmiris. So again, my question is, why have we not done that? Also, on the issue of women, there is a very clear-cut UN Security Council resolution of October 2000, which on women, peace and security. So we need to appeal to women organizations, to women across the world, the gender violence that is being perpetrated on Kashmiri women in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So what I'm saying is the international environment has altered, and we have options which we did not have before, because the Indian government stands exposed as never before. And I think a lot of that being exposed has to do with the Prime Minister's narrative that he launched after August the 5th, linking the Hindutva supremacist ideology of Modi to the Nazi ideology of fascism. And I think that if we move on different, one is, what's the point of doing anything? Nobody will listen. I don't buy that. I think there are now civil society groups, there are human rights groups which have already taken issue with India and Modi and what they're doing in occupied Kashmir. We need to use these as pressure groups. We need to be able to use these to influence the major powers to take action against India. It's not something that remains beyond our reach anymore, because, as I said, the ground realities have altered. And I think that one other important factor that we are not considering is the fact that the Kashmiri diaspora happens to be a very strong diaspora. They're based in countries where they form a strong electoral force. And at the end of the day, they can influence their governments much more than we can, maybe sitting in Pakistan. And the Kashmiri diaspora needs to really recognize the power that it holds to be able to influence and bring about change in the governments of the countries where they now reside. UK is one example, but there's Norway, there's Denmark, there are a lot of European countries, and we need to take that up as well. Also, even though Pakistan and India are not signatories to the International Criminal Court, Kashmiris as individuals can take their cases to the ICC. And I think that needs to be done as well. And when I talk, finally, I just want to, because I won't take up too much time, I think I've already done that. But there's one other thing that I want to raise, and that is that the ground realities have also changed, because India is now directly bringing in the nuclear factor and war with Pakistan with what it is perpetrating in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We saw that with the whole incident that happened with the dogfight, and of course the capture of the Indian pilot, which we very graciously returned. But the point is that we have to tell the world that India is almost itching to have a war with Pakistan. And when a nuclear country that is tempted to instigate a war against its nuclear neighbor, then unintended consequences will result. The line of control has seen consistent and increasing intensity of firing from the Indian side. The same is happening with the working boundary. So these are all things that we need to keep pointing out to the world, that there is not just the assumption of a nuclear flashpoint, but the Indians are moving towards making that flashpoint almost a reality. And while Pakistan has behaved with excessive restraint, I think, but how long will that restraint continue? I don't think that it's something that is going to be assumed to be there all the time. If the Indians do some adventurism, then I think at some stage Pakistan will move into action, and that then we don't know where that conflict would lead to. So that's the other issue that we need to keep highlighting. And meanwhile, we also need to keep on our own media telling our people the plight of the Kashmiris, and of course the courage and bravery of the Kashmiris, who throughout this 1 year of lockdown and siege and brutality continue to fight and continue to assert their right for self-determination against the occupation forces. There has not been a day that the Indian security forces have been allowed to relax and sort of feel comfortable in occupying Jammu and Kashmir. That has not been allowed to them by the Kashmiris and their bravery who are taking them on. I mean, and the Indian answer to it is, of course, to throw all the Kashmiris into either prisons or to just kill them outright. We have now, of course, the half widows in Kashmir who don't know what has happened to their brothers or husbands or fathers. So, let us not forget that at the end of the day, each and every Kashmiri family in occupied Kashmir has suffered and is also fighting against the occupation. And therefore, the international community must come in and take action against India. And if Pakistan is not going to spearhead through aggressive diplomacy and push for some sort of action, no one else is going to do it for us. So the time has come that, yes, the Prime Minister has taken a very strong position on Kashmir, but there has to be institutional follow-up. There has to be institutional carry forward. One man can give you the narrative, one man can stand firm, but if the institutional structures have no clarity or they're not prepared to move out of their traditional mode of thinking, then I'm afraid that we are doing a great disservice and injustice to the Kashmiris who are fighting against Indian occupation and Indian repression in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And I would leave it at that and then see what questions arise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. That was very kind of you. And you have highlighted all the issues that are affecting the resolution of Jammu and Kashmir, Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, as well as the plight of human rights violation that they have been suffering for the longest, with this additional layer of the year-long curfew and what violations of human rights as well as international treaties is taking place. We are honored to have with us the Vice Chancellor, Quaid-i-Azam University, Dr. Syed Mohammad Ali, Tamkha-e-Imtiaz. Dr. Mohammad Ali joined the Quaid-i-Azam University as the Vice Chancellor in 2018. He has previously served as the Vice Chancellor of the Government College University, GCU, Faisalabad. Dr. Ali specializes in the field of biological sciences, and he earned his PhD from the University of Wales, UK, in postdoc from the United States of America. He's a recipient of numerous national awards, including the Tamkha-e-Imtiaz, and is an outstanding academic and academician. I welcome you, sir, for your welcome comments and few points that you would like to add to this forum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salma, and my apology to Dr. Shireen Mazari and all our other participants and speakers. I was in a meeting with Governor Punjab and got a few minutes late. So I'm thankful to the Honorable Minister. She is part of our fraternity. She is part of us. And I heard her views, and I am on behalf of Quaid-i-Azam University and myself, I'm thankful for a very comprehensive lecture on this current issue, crisis, Kashmir issue. And I look forward to listening to the other speakers as well. I would like to appreciate the efforts of the Dean of Faculty and all our faculty members who were actively involved in organizing today's seminar, webinar. And there's one thing which I want to reiterate, that like Dr. Shireen said, it is our responsibility, and we all feel this responsibility that we have to keep this issue highlighting. We condemn the action taken by the Modi government last 5th August, and we all are together. And we also request to the United Nations, the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, the 5 members, that they must take up this issue because it's a humanitarian crisis. And on top of it, that the government of Pakistan and the people of Pakistan are very much concerned about it. And we are together with the Kashmiris for this struggle and for this effort. I once again want to uh, acknowledge the efforts of the Prime Minister of Pakistan, current government, and their very firm stance which they took. And we also would like to say that we are with our government on this issue. Last year, we drafted a resolution on this issue and wrote a letter to almost all top universities in the world. We will again write a letter to the presidents and rectors and vice chancellors of all the top universities of the world. Once again, I am thankful to the honorable speakers, and I'm thankful to the organizers and look forward to listening to the views of our other speakers. So thank you very much, Dr. Salma.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm extremely humbled and honored. Before again, I give the space to our keynote speakers of the day. I would like to reiterate that for those of you who are tuning into this special webinar, there are 3 live Facebook channels which are broadcasting or live streaming. I'm bit into the traditional conversation, which are live streaming the seminar proceedings. And 2 of those channels are the Quaid-i-Azam University channels. One is QAU Islamabad Official, the second is QAU 50, and the third is our partner radio channel and as well as Facebook channel, Power Radio 99 Live. So any one of you, which is an FM channel, and it also has a Facebook presence, any one of you who cannot log on to the Facebook, QAU Facebook channels, they can also log into, for their convenience, the Power 99 FM channel, and kindly post your questions there, your comments, valuable comments there, and we will take them up as soon as our speakers are done with their presentations. I would now like to request our first keynote speaker, the Honorable Justice Retired Syed Manzoor Hussain Gillani, to kindly join us for his valuable comments. Justice Gillani graduated from Jammu and Kashmir University, Srinagar in 1968 and obtained his law degree from Aligarh Muslim University. Justice Gillani has a distinguished career in the judiciary circles, and he rose to from the Advocate of the Court of AJK in 1979. He retired as the Acting Chief Justice of Azad Jammu and Kashmir in the year 2010. His Lordship has also authored several books. Currently, he's the member of the Council of Islamic Ideology, Pakistan. He's also chairman of the Association of Rights of the People of Jammu and Kashmir, a think tank. Sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, madam. And thank you to Dr. Nazir and Vice Chancellor for our webinar. Respect and salam to ambassadors and the participants here. I'm thankful to you again. We have entered into the second year of the siege and the lockdown in the Indian occupied part of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It was really sad that along with the siege by India, lockdown by India, man-made India, the nature has also operated, and the this pandemic has has paved the way for India to do all that it could not otherwise do, probably otherwise could not do in other in normal courses. It is really very sad story. The action taken by the Government of India on 5th of August 2019, the order issued by it is in fact issued under
Justice Gillani sir, your audio and video is not visible.
Madam.
Reconnect करें.
Dr. Salma ma'am, I think there's some other problem, not with the connection problem.
Right, sir. Sir, Professor Nazir Sahab, if you allow us, if we can.
जी Mr. Riaz Khokar साहब को ले लें. उनको
Gillani sir,
ये मैं अपना हेलो
जी सर,
जी Gillani साहब.
हेलो
सर, हम आपको देखकर सुन सकते हैं. जी, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah, okay, no problem if you can hear me. This is the state of affairs in AJK about the net and about the electricity. We have gone under load shedding and then the nets affected. I was talking about that the government of India has issued the order practically and implemented in a way that the Muslims of the valley of the state are most punished. And particularly therein, the people who have been taking the flag of India in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, that is Abdullah's father as well as the son, the Mahbooba Mufti, and the Sajjad Lone, who was declared by Modi to be his younger brother, and he was an ally of it. It was a punishment to him. This was the first action they have taken, besides many, many thousands of the people who have been arrested soon before the issuance of the order. I think that was the proper occasion that the Abdullahs and the Muftis and the Sajjad who have been advocating for the autonomy in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan should have offered on the same date to them that we are prepared to give the quantum of autonomy you have been asking from India, and you are punished for that. However, it is lost, but still we have the time to do it. The Article 3, I have been allocated the topic of Article 370 and the Article 35A. These both articles have a history of 100 years behind them. It was in 1927 that the essence incorporated in Article 35A was introduced in the state of Jammu and Kashmir in 1927. And when the Constitution of India was drafted, the Sheikh Abdullah was in negotiations with the government of India. He had asked the government of India that the institute of accession, which the ruler has executed in favor of India, that should be incorporated as a whole in the Article 370, which was being drafted by the government of India. But to his dismay, when the bill was presented in the parliament, instead of incorporating whole of the accession document, they incorporated a few lines of it, and the part which dealt with the rights of the state subject, which should have been in the Article 370, it deleted. That was the day when Sheikh Abdullah and India, a rift was created between Nehru and Sheikh Abdullah, and it went on. So when the article, despite that, when in 1954, the bulk of the Indian Constitution was extended to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, it also included Article 35A, which essence of which is that the state assembly shall have the exclusive power to define the residents of the state or the state subjects, whatever it is, and then confer such rights upon them as the assembly deems proper. So it had, after 1927, it was reiterated in 1954 in the Article 370 as well as 35A. And the way it has been done away it was absolutely unconstitutional as far as this Constitution of Indian Union is concerned. The accession with these conditions was allowed by Article 3 of the Constitution of India, that the states can be admitted or the territories can be admitted in the Union of India on such terms and conditions as may be agreed upon between the signatories to agree. So the ruler of the state, he should not have done like that, but if at all he has done like that, the agreement was that they will have the defense, foreign affairs and communication only, and that they went beyond that. They stipulated in the Article 370 that besides the subjects which have been assigned to the government of India directly, the government of India can adopt, can enforce any other provision of the Constitution with the consent or the concurrence of the State Assembly. So this was never agreed between the representatives of the state of Jammu and Kashmir in the Constituent Assembly of India, and it has never been a clause in the Delhi Agreement of 1952. You see, the Delhi Agreement subsequently also became one of the reasons for drafting Article 35A. I was referring to Article 3 of the Constitution of India, that they could. The conditions could be drafted between the two powers, between the union and as well as the state for accession on such grounds as may be agreed. These were the grounds with it. And then there was Article 2 in the Constitution of India, Article 2 in the Constitution of India, which has specifically been amended for the state of Jammu and Kashmir, is enforced in the Jammu and Kashmir, that the boundaries of the state and the name of the state cannot be changed without the resolution, without the consent of the State Assembly. And the State Assembly was not in existence. What mischief they did? The mischief is that on issuing the order of 5th of August, they designated the governor as the government of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. He was also designated in the same order as the Assembly of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and more so, who was designated as the Constituent Assembly of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It is really astonishing that a person with the same face is performing 3-4 functions at the same time, and it was the height of the violation of the Constitution of India, that the governor, who is the representative of the Union of India, has been empowered and has been designated as the Constituent Assembly of the state. The significance of the Constituent Assembly is that Article 370 can be abrogated. Of course, the Article 370 itself includes a clause in it that it can be abrogated by the President of India on the recommendation of the Constituent Assembly of the state. The Constituent Assembly of the state, after framing the Constitution, after ratifying the accession document, it ceased to exist in 1956. So there was no Constituent Assembly, there was no recommendation of the Constituent Assembly for that. And the India played the mischief under this order that the governor of the state was declared as the Constituent Assembly to give the consent for the deletion or for the abrogation of Article 370, which still is there, but it is redundant, it has been rendered redundant. Everything is taken out of that. So this is the position of it. I would be failing in my duty if I would say that Pakistan should have very forcefully, diplomatically taken up the Kashmir issue through the Kashmiris in the world, and it should have at the same time the moment India had abrogated Article 370, redundant Article 370, they cancelled abrogated the Constitution of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It abrogated and withdrew all the concessions and all the symbolic autonomy or symbolic sovereignty, symbols of sovereignty under government order, President order of 54. The Pakistan should have on the same date amended its own constitution and included whole of the state of Jammu and Kashmir as a disputed part of the Pakistan, subject to final determination in accordance with the UNCA resolution. In my estimation, and I think the learned speakers here, they will endorse me, There is no mention of the UNCIP resolutions, the UN resolutions in the Constitution of Pakistan or the dispensation of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. There is only one article, that is 257, that when Kashmiris decide to accede to Pakistan, the relationship between Pakistan and them shall be settled in accordance with the wishes of the Kashmiris. Okay, the day when the India issued the order of 257, at this 5th of August, the Pakistan should have amended the constitution and incorporated in the constitution itself that the whole of the state of Jammu and Kashmir is part of Pakistan, subject to final resolution under the through the UNCIP resolutions, and the final resolution shall be in accordance with the spirit of Article 257. In my estimation, Article 257 itself includes Azadi. When it uses the words that the relationship between state and the Pakistan shall be determined in accordance with the wishes of the people. So the wishes of the people would be the supreme, and if the people so like, they can at that moment when the relations are being determined, they could say that we want Azadi, or we want confederation with Pakistan, or any other wish with the Kashmiri wanted. So in my estimation, the Azadi is enshrined, it is embedded in Article 257. Now that a map has been issued by the government of Pakistan, of course, I endorse this map, and I'm happy on it for the reason that number one, that the whole of the state of Jammu and Kashmir is described in it as one unit. So that's very important. Otherwise, it was this fragmented Gilgit and Baltistan, the Azad Jammu and Kashmir, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and the Union Territory of Ladakh. It is a very good sign. And at the same time, the flag of Pakistan, it must be fortified by amendment in the Constitution of Pakistan. As I earlier said, that the Constitution of Pakistan be amended in the manner that the whole of the state of Jammu and Kashmir be included in the Constitution, subject to final determination regarding the UNCIP resolutions. And pending that, AJK and Gilgit-Baltistan must be given the provisional representation with in a manner as India had given to the state of Jammu and Kashmir right from 50 to 1968 to nominate its representatives for the Parliament of India. Similarly, Pakistan should give the AJK and Gilgit-Baltistan the representation in the Parliament of Pakistan. Whatever the mode may be, it may be through election, it may be through nomination, as the AJK council is being elected by the Assembly of AJK. And it should at the same time be given representation in all the institutions of Pakistan which make the policy and which make the decisions. You see, at the moment, the AJK is being dealt with like a province of Pakistan, and everything which is happening in the provinces of Pakistan, it is multiplied in AJK, and that is done in AJK. So AJK should have the voice in the National Security Council, it should have the voice in the Council of Common Interest and all other institutions of Pakistan. So unless the flag issued by the government of Pakistan showing entire state as a part of Pakistan is fortified by the amendment in the constitution, I don't think the people of state of Jammu and Kashmir are going to get any benefit of it. And then I would suggest that the Azad Jammu and Kashmir government, at the same time, if this is not possible to amend the constitution and include them in the policy making decision, then it should be reverted back to the position of 1947, when the 1947, 24th of October, which we celebrate every year with very with fervor, political fervor, and with the fervor of faith, that this is the day of our independence, and this is the day of our Tasis. So it should be reverted then to that position, 24th of October, so that we have a say, we have a government, we have an authority, we have a sovereignty, and we represent the case throughout India, throughout the world, as the Kashmiris do. If the first part of my demand that we should be given the representation in the institutions of Pakistan, if it is not accepted, then it should be reverted back to this. With this, I thank you all. Thank you very much for taking me online.
Extremely grateful, Honorable Justice Saab, for your kind comments and looking at the legal aspect of this critical issue. Our next keynote speaker for the day is Ambassador retired Riaz M. Khokar, Riaz Hussain Khokar. Ambassador Khokar joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1966 and holds a distinguished career which spans over several continents, a lot of leaders, a lot of parleys, and a highly distinguished career, so to speak. Before rising to the top post of foreign ministry as the foreign secretary of Pakistan, Ambassador as Pakistan's envoy to Dhaka, New Delhi, Washington, D.C., and Beijing. He carries with him a vast and distinguished experience in diplomacy, and post-retirement, he has represented his countries in various multi-track diplomatic fora as well. Sir, the mic is yours. Kindly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Minister, distinguished Vice Chancellor, Mohammad Ali Sahib, distinguished speakers, Justice Gillani Sahib, other panelists, and of course the audience. I'm very grateful to the Quaid-i-Azam University and to Dr. Salma to have invited me to participate in this webinar. I start by first of all paying the warmest tributes and salute to all the Kashmiris who have been martyred over the decades. I also wish to compliment and pay my homage to the brave Kashmiri people who are now fighting in Kashmir. I don't want to go into deep into the history of this issue because it's very long and very complicated. But I'd just like to start by my very brief comments before I get into the more important aspect of the questions that Dr. Shireen Mazari raised about the international situation and why the world is not reacting. First of all, I would say that all Indian prime ministers have, in a very criminal and treacherous manner, dealt with the Kashmir dispute. The first culprit, of course, in this game is Jawaharlal Nehru himself, who never really actually believed in plebiscite. He tried to fool the people of Kashmir. He fooled the international community. He lied to Pakistan. And subsequently, as you know, all the 3 or 4 wars that we had were during the Congress period. But clearly, today, the people of Jammu and Kashmir are going through the worst possible situation. I think this is one of the darkest periods in their history, and especially the satanic steps that Prime Minister Modi has taken to suppress the people of Jammu and Kashmir and unleash terror and violence. Dr. Mazari was very right that, of course, some of the things that they've done that even the Nazis have not done. So that, and of course, now I would like to say, yes, clearly the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Imran Khan, made a very fiery and impressive speech in Jammu in the UN about and putting the case, Pakistan's case and the case of the Kashmiris before the international community. But I want to be very frank. The world, as you know, the world order is in a bit of a flux. Not a bit of a flux, but in a very dangerous flux. And for 70 years, we have been advocating the cause of Kashmir in the UN and other forums. I also want to remind people, not very many people read these things, because when Sir Zafrullah presented the case before the United Nations, at that time it was not a human rights issue. It's become a human rights issue somewhat gradually now. But originally it was an issue related to the right of self-determination, and self-determination linked to a specific territory. That is the territory of Jammu and Kashmir. We forget that. It's basically a political dispute about the rights of the people for a specific territory. Now the question is, why is the world like this? We had 4 wars with India, 1948. 48, India took the mat of the United Nations. In fact, we should be grateful to the Indians to have taken us to the United Nations, because then, by taking us to the United Nations, we became a party. The Kashmiris became a party. The international community became a party. So there are now 4 parties to the dispute, which is an internationally recognized dispute, one of the oldest before the United Nations, other than the Palestinian issue. The reality is the relationship among the major powers. United Nations is basically hamstrung because of the games that are played in the Security Council. That is the critical issue. In 1971, when Pakistan was dismembered, 116 or 17 countries voted for Pakistan. And yet, we were not able to do anything and prevent shall we say, the breakup of Pakistan. Now, as I said, the world order is in very dangerous flux. In the last 1 year, can any one of us tell us if any of the major capitals in the world issued a serious and a strong condemnation of the steps that India had taken? India has taken steps in complete violation of the UN Charter, UN resolutions, its own constitutions. It does not care a damn about law, about international law. It has taken what it calls its right. And the right is, in India's opinion, might. And that is why India has occupied Kashmir. There is no annexation. I mean, there was no accession. The people of Jammu and Kashmir did not accept accession, number one. People of Jammu and Kashmir did not even accept Article 370. I don't see why we talk about 370. 370 has never, ever been endorsed by Pakistan. Never. I'd stand corrected if you can show any endorsement that Pakistan has made. Now, we should not be talking about the past. It's sort of that is past. We have to talk about the future. How can we do and how can we help the people of Jammu and Kashmir? Internationally, I'll be very frank. Dr. Mazari raised many things. You can take the matter to the UN Human Rights Commission and this court and that court. But in the ultimate analysis, it's the ground realities that matter, number one. And the international realities, which are very cold-blooded, and that's realpolitik. Interests are more important to each country than issues of other countries. That is the reality of the current situation. If you recall, she mentioned that we were able to get some Security Council meetings done. What happened in the Security Council meetings? I mean, they were just a discussion. There was just a consultation. We could not even get a statement issued. It's not that for lack of trying. No Pakistani diplomat would fail on this count by making the effort to project the Kashmir issue. That was pure, what you call, realpolitik. And it's interesting that it's France that actually was preventing the session. And who was being encouraged by France? The United States. So please look at the United Nations carefully. There are 5 members, permanent. USA is not with Pakistan. Please try and understand that reality. UK is not with Pakistan. They are perhaps very perfidious in their role. France is not with Pakistan. China is your only supporter. Russia sits on the fence. In the past, they used to veto resolution. Now they probably don't do that, but they are very smart in that diplomatic effort. Others don't really count. Now, OIC, I'm afraid, I have spent a lifetime in Pakistan Foreign Service. I can tell you it was never effective. It will not be effective, and it will not be effective on Kashmir, other than the odd voice that you will get from Malaysia or Turkey or Iran or maybe one or two others. But in reality, these Muslim countries, unfortunately, are too deeply committed to certain powers. They, on whose, shall we say, umbrella they depend for security, and their understanding and their linkages with Israel. So that is the cold-blooded reality. I'm a believer, I'm a realist, that Kashmir will become independent only on two counts: the struggle that goes on inside Kashmir and what Pakistan can do. I no longer believe in this political, legal, diplomatic support. This mantra is now meaningless. We have to be very clear in our mind that if you want the liberation of Kashmir, then talk about full spectrum support to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. People of Jammu and Kashmir are dying like flies because Modi has turned Kashmir into a huge Nazi military camp. And for them, killing Muslims and killing Kashmiris is not a matter of their conscience. They don't have a conscience. Unfortunately, they don't have a conscience. We cannot rely on the social groups in India. Whatever Modi has done, unfortunately, is a popular step. Whatever he has done in Kashmir is a popular step. And now this rascal is building this mandir. And for the next 4 years or 4 years or so, he will use the mandir issue to get re-elected. So let's look at the reality. The reality is in Kashmir, in India, there is a clear consensus. No concessions to the Kashmiris, no concessions to the Pakistanis, no talks with Pakistan. We will use our might to do what we think, in their opinion, is right. I'm speaking very frankly because this is a very important day, and we should not be misleading the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Final comment. When I say full spectrum support, this is not a forum on which it can be spelled out, but those who deal with these matters know what I mean. We have to be very clear. In Pakistan, there has to be a national consensus on this issue, like it is in India. In India, there is a national consensus that no concessions to Pakistan, no talks with Pakistan, no concessions to the Kashmiris. And if, let us say, for argument's sake, that some people have been saying, if Modi goes away, let me tell you, nothing will be reversed. Reversing things is actually one of the most difficult things to do. So we have to live with the current situation and find ways and means of dealing with the Kashmir issue. Diplomatic activity is important. We have a very clear position, very strong position. People of Jammu and Kashmir have a very strong position. There's no doubt about it. But unfortunately, the conscience of the international community is dead. It's dead. This is the word I want to use, that please try and understand that. Dr. Mazari talked about Prime Minister's narrative. How many capitals have issued a statement after that? How many capitals have said Mr. Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, is right about the activities of Modi in Kashmir, that they are very Nazi-like? Not one single statement. Let's be honest. Of course, the media has talked about it. The media has written about it. But media is only one aspect. So I would say 3 important factors here. Clarity, consistency of policy on Kashmir in Pakistan. How? Based on national consensus. Dr. Mazari talked about it. I wish the demonstrations that we saw today on the streets of various cities of Pakistan, I wish they had been multi-party. This was basically a PTI show. I wish they had been multi-party, number one. Number two, our armed forces have to be very clear. Can they deliver? I think that's important. And number three, we have to mobilize the Kashmiris who are living in various parts of the world, the diaspora. They're very well organized, they're rich, they count a lot. But, you know, we have talked about the British Parliament's support and some support in the Congress. These are eye washers. Please face realities. The international community, the international world is very brutal, very nasty. And to find space in this brutal and nasty world is becoming more difficult by the day. More difficult by the day. So let's look at things realistically, and let's be very clear and cold-blooded about our own policy. Is it in our national interest to stand by Kashmiris, not by making speeches or statements, or by what you call, appealing to the international community? Action. You can see that wherever people have been free, there has been action. In our case, of course, I just want to highlight this point. Kashmiris are Muslims, Palestinians are Muslims. East Timor was made free, there was a referendum, there was a plebiscite, because they were Christians. South Sudan, again, it was a question of saving a Christian community. So these are the brutal realities of the world. So we must be very clear in our mind. First, put your house in order, get a clear mandate from the parliament, which is based on national consensus. All institutions of Pakistan should be on board. No space in any institutions, and give a clear mandate, to the foreign ministry to advocate abroad, and a clear mandate to the armed forces that you've got to do your job. That's why they have been fed for 70 years. So let's be very honest. I'm very straightforward about these things. I've always believed in it. I have 10 years experience of living in India. Don't expect any concessions from India. It'll never happen. And let me conclude on my final comment. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and certainly expect trouble from India. So be ready. Thank you.
I'm most grateful, Ambassador Khokar, for your extremely candid, thought-provoking discussion. I think these are some hard-hitting realities and questions that we, in our utmost sincere and genuine sentiments and feelings, tend to overlook. And I think if we really need to resolve a problem such as the Indian occupation of Jammu and Kashmir, more than emotions, it has to be a logical play that is going to win the game for us. Thank you very much, sir, for your keynote address. With this, we move to our second session. We have a distinguished panel of speakers comprising of 4 speakers: Ambassador Retired Arif Kamal Sahab, Ms. Farzana Yaqoob Sahiba, Dr. Javaid Hayat Sahab, and Dr. Raja Keyser Ahmed Sahab. I would first like to invite Ambassador Retired Arif Kamal Sahab, who holds a 3 decades of strong diplomatic career in the Pakistan's foreign services. He has served as desk officers and also in various positions at Pakistani missions at critical points. He has served in Tokyo, Ottawa, Consul General to Jeddah. He has later been Ambassador of Pakistan to Qatar, to Jordan, and he is also the recipient of the highest civil award by the Jordanian government, which is the Medallion of Independence in the First Order and the Sash of Merit from Qatar's His Highness Sheikh Hamid bin Khalifa Al Sahni. Post-retirement, Ambassador Kamal has served as Director General, Global Studies Institute of Strategic Studies, Research and Analysis, National Defense University. Sir, we would appreciate if you can kindly focus more towards the internal dynamics of the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Distinguished Vice Chancellor, Chief Guest Dr. Shireen Mazari, and distinguished panelists. I am reminded of a proverb, a quote that rings the bell all the time, that Kashmiris engage in a distressful situation. Shaukat Ali, a great man of literature, had once said, described his country as a country without a post office. And today, the people of that state are people without a state. What a transformation that is taking place in that is an exercise that is aimed at breaking the will of a people and dismantling the legal personality of that political entity. And this is very much in line with the new Nazi agenda, the mission that comes with the rise of Andauta in our neighborhood. Concurrent with the inner Kashmiri dynamics, it is also important to keep in view the questions about the efficacy of our Kashmir policy, if there is one, and we are assured by Dr. Mazari that there is one, and the so-called pendulum swing between what we see as people's right to self-determination and what may be viewed as territorial aggrandizement, and therefore of the competing powers. And therefore, I think there are interlinkages of domestic scenario with what comes from the neighborhood. But I would certainly confine in those coming 7 minutes on the inner dynamics. But first of all, looking back on the 5th of August 2019, I think we need to keep in view, and we should not be unforgetful of the... Hello? Hello? Is it okay? I go ahead? Okay. Okay. Now let me go back into 1 year and recall 3 elements of the situation as it had unfolded on 5th of August. I look at it, first of all, from the standpoint of an assault on Kashmiri people's political identity and the legal personality of the state as registered with the international community. The second the second aspect of significance in that development was to cause fragmentation of the state, as one can call it today as West Bankization, and thus pave the way for a demographic re-engineering that is now underway. And the third would be is to serve a body blow to the Kashmir dispute as it continues to exist at the UN forum, and thus erode the capacity, the images that transmit with the principal party, and to internalize the whole thing as a whole. Now, I think if we keep these 3 things, 3 aspects in view, we will know that the fears have come true in the past 1 year. the assault on identity and legal personality has, first of all, disempowered the people and also generated, although incrementally, an acute awareness of this great loss. Now, here I would like to point out the aspects that overshadow all other aspects. First of all, the decisions are made in Delhi now, not in Leh and not in Srinagar. And we have seen manifestations of that in the past 6-7 months of the transformations that are being unfolded in Jammu and in Ladakh. Again, the impact of the assault on the valley is, of course, much more pronounced, but there is a creeping fear and an unease in Jammu. When I say Jammu, I mean Jammu of the natives, and in Ladakh. Today, this morning, if you pick up the newspapers from the Indian side of Kashmir, you find Dogra editor of Kashmir Times, Anuradha Basin, standing with a placard saying, "We stand by the J&K as a whole," and criticizing the Indian report card of 1 year in her write-up, which has been carried by Arab News as well. We also know of the statement of mainstream political parties jointly made in Kargil, saying that this is a black day. Now again, I would say that one has to also see how changes in the Buddhist Ladakh have taken place. The BJP chair of in Ladakh tendered his resignation 2 months back, saying that the decision, they have no participation in the decision making. So I think this is, of course, a valley-specific situation in a bigger way. There's much more pronounced, but it has a creeping unease and fears elsewhere in the J&K state. And of course, 35A, the loss of it plays a critically important role. We also know of the demographic changes that have already been made by way of a new law, domicile law. I think 400,000 certificates were issued until 31st of last month. And again, there are waves of Biharis and others from India who have been entering Jammu on their way to the east, to the west, to parts of Jammu that neighbor the valley, and where the balance is so delicate. Their influx of few thousand can make a difference in Doda, in Chenab Valley, of course not in Pir Panjal, but it can do also a lot of havoc playing there in that area also. Also, we know of the procedural steps that have already been taken for land transfers to the defense forces and to whatsoever tourism for further downstream actions. Now, to really getting closer to the wrap up, I think we also need to keep in view that the political assault also comes with a cultural invasion and a cultural aggression. The university curriculum, the universities are now seen from Delhi. The Waqf boards, the official language, the script, all these are under stress. And therefore, there are also the levers that control the media and the internet. Again, I think we also need to keep in view that this was the only time in the 70 years of history of J&K that the so-called mainstream and the so-called separatists were for quite a number of months on one page. And even today, the rejection of the action that has been taken on August 5 last year, the rejection remains across the board, although we know for sure that there is a low-key dialogue going on with the erstwhile mainstream, but then they too are quite afraid of coming in the front. And therefore, I think we need to keep that in view, that it is an important factor. Now, just to wrap up, I think we need to keep in view as to what we could have done, as has been very eloquently pointed out, and what could not have been done. It's not for me to restate that, but in my view, if the case, the Kashmir case, from the standpoint of Pakistan, relates to self-determination of a people and not a territorial aggrandizement, then this was the time, this 1 year, to institutionalize the Kashmiri voices and of the institutionalize the voices of the principal party and across the divides, and not to make our own serfdoms and our own pockets. And that's how you establish a platform of the citizens of J&K across the divide, whatever name you may give to that platform, for advocacy and for internal coordination. We haven't done that. We should also, I think, have not been clear on kufr or Islam ki jang ke upar. And it seemed that we have not been able to shun the temptation of portraying this as a kufr or Islam ki jang instead of our fight against the new Nazis or the new fascists. Thirdly, I think what we haven't done is that we could have done it, and we can perhaps still do it, is that the Kashmiri identity is a vital force, political identity. And that vital force could have been weaponized. I use this word, please do not understand in the military sense. Could have been weaponized and made to work as an antidote to the Indian hegemony of civilian. So I don't want to expand on that. And I think I will again refresh you or ask you to refresh yourselves on what our Shaukat Ali has described a country without a post office. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador sir, for your perspective from inside the occupied Jammu and Kashmir Valley under Indian occupation. I would now like to invite Ms. Farzana Yaqoob, the youngest member of the forum, to express her views on the gender perspective of this question. Ms. Yaqoob represents the next generation leadership of South Asia, being a youth leader, social activist, entrepreneur from Azad Jammu and Kashmir. She believes in humanity and striving for justice. Farzana has been a former Minister for Social Welfare and Women Development, AGK government, and her profile during her tenure as the minister has been extremely impressive and full of achievements that she has gained. Ms. Yaqoob is the founding member and chief executive of Center for Asian African Studies. She's also been part of several think tanks and research fora, both from Kashmir as well as Pakistan. And she has also been the Eisenhower Fellow of 2016. In 2017, she was given the title of Young Global Leader of the World Economic Forum. Farzana, your CV is extremely impressive, but we have very little time. So with that, I would hand over the mic to you. Kindly, for the next 10 minutes, you have the space. Farzana, could you kindly unmute?
Okay, thank you so much to the team at Quaid-i-Azam University for holding this discussion. I will be switching between both the languages, English and Urdu. सही वक्त, सही मौजू और अच्छे लोग, उसमें हकीकत भी आती है और हकीकत से तकलीफ भी महसूस होती है. लेकिन तकलीफ महसूस होने का मतलब ये नहीं होना चाहिए कि हम अब कुछ कर नहीं सकते। यकीन यही रहना चाहिए कि बहुत कुछ किया जा सकता है और जितनी भी गलतियां हैं उन्हें दुरुस्त करने की ज़रूरत है। बहुत कुछ किया जा सकता था, नहीं किया गया, और उसमें फिंगर पॉइंटिंग का अब कोई फ़ायदा नहीं रहा। लेकिन ये है कि पास्ट मिस्टेक्स से जो है अगर हम सीख लेते हैं तो उम्मीद यही रखी जा सकती है कि जो हमारा मुस्तकबिल है वो बेहतर होगा, क्योंकि हम लोग जो है अपनी नाकामियों को पीछे छोड़ आए हैं और अब सफ़र है कामयाबी की तरफ। ख़वातीन एंड द इश्यूज रिलेटेड टू जेंडर, Kashmir is replete with massive stories of abuses of women. The most infamous is Kunan Poshpura. Sadly, Pakistan and Kashmiris themselves have never been able to get this massive, horrific incident recognized or understood anywhere at any platform. Reason being that mostly the people who go out to represent or speak about Kashmir at different platforms seldom really know about Kashmir. So we need to fix that, and this will be mostly about the parliamentarians who are visiting. Kashmir committee within the National Assembly of Pakistan has been an utter disappointment. I'm sure I will be stepping on quite a few huge toes, but it is what it is. And since everyone spoke very bravely and truthfully, I had to add that in. So women are raped and they are abused. We have not been able to raise this issue in its in the way that it should have been. Also, the fact that children are also heavily impacted and affected. A child's dead body, when landed on a beach, and the child happened to be, I believe, Syrian, the whole world went crazy and stood up. It was a Muslim child, and so Syria was attacked. But we are so weak, and we are so utterly unable to show our conflict being of any importance, that when a child, a 3 to 4 year old child, is placed on the dead body of his grandfather and photos are taken by the Indian government, the forces over there, nothing really happened. To be honest, even within Pakistani media, the hue and cry was worth only a few minutes of the extremely busy political, whatever colorful words that you would want to think of. So what to say about anything else? Women tend to be last in any discussion. Last member at the table of a conflict is the woman, but she is the first to face and to feel the brunt of the conflict. So women are taking care. The major caretakers are women. So there we have, our icons. Who are our icons? Asia Andrabi, who is in Tihar jail. This woman has never shot a person. Her husband is also in a jail. He has also not killed anyone. These people who are in Tihar jail, quite a few of them have never even picked up a gun. But they are in Tihar jail because of their dissent and criticism and of them being brave. And so these three women of the Farane Millat. Asia Andrabi was recently shifted into well, it is a high security jail anyways, but she was shifted into within Tihar jail amongst really dangerous criminals. So now this woman who has only used her words is more dangerous than people who have actually killed human beings. So that is what you see. Burhan Wani, the young boy who really came up as a hero and a face. He gave this young, beautiful, fresh face. If you were to really look into what Burhan Wani did, you would find out that although he was taking photographs with ammunition, he never killed anyone. This young man who was killed by the Indian forces never killed anyone. during COVID, the whole world was taking care of, all the countries were taking care of their citizens. It is only India which was still killing Kashmiris within Indian occupied Kashmir. How are we helping our people on that side? We are not. Are we prepared to help them? Worthy leaders can tell us. What we are told is not very hopeful, and nothing good is yet to be seen. I just hope that I could share the stories of what happens to women. Our Bakarwaz and the 7 to 8-year-old Asya who was continuously murdered in the and then her dead body was thrown away. She was actually being raped regularly in one of their these temples, and so. Horrible stories, and Bakarwal for them are literally like their Dalits. Kashmiris, by the way, can be equated to Dalits in India. We're the unseen and the untouchables. No one will help us. If anyone tries to help us, they will not be allowed to help us. So all these good voices, Indian voices that we are so proud of course they speak very well. I mean, I could name them. Arundhati Roy is a very, very strong force to be reckoned with. Natasha Kaul, Rana Ayub, these are brave women who speak about Kashmir. But you see, we also speak about Kashmir. So what's the difference when there is no action and there is no relief? So हमने बातों के इतने जहाज चला दिए हैं कि लिल्ला अब आसमान नहीं नजर आता. लेकिन कार्रवाई जो है after the 80s and 90s, in all honesty, we stopped actually helping Kashmiris. Admit it. It can be seen. What Pervez Musharraf Sahab did by confidence building measures was whatever the intention was. And we did get the opportunity, the Kashmiris did get the opportunity to unify, to meet each other. We were able to make joint chambers of commerce, but it also provided a peace, a lull where India constructed a wall. So, when we are making these decisions of how much we want to engage with India and at what levels we want to engage with India, we must remember that whatever intentions Pakistan has, and as Ambassador Khokar clearly said, that India is not interested in Pakistanis to have good relations with Pakistanis. You travel out, you speak to Indians, and they will tell you how much they dislike you. And so, we being these hip liberal people that, we have to be politically correct and we have to be the nice one in the game. No, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we're the ones who's dying. I'm also told that, oh my God, the numbers are not huge enough. How many Kashmiris do you want dead to have the number to gain the traction? This is the 3rd or 4th generation. What we also need to remember is that Kashmiris don't have a choice. They have been cornered. If Pakistan assumes that the new generation will keep on looking towards this country, and Pakistan does not help them in any in different manners, which of course shouldn't be discussed over here, then please let me remind you, and this is an honest information. It's not an opinion. They will go for an independent Kashmir. And I will also tell you that if and when the Kashmiris give up hope on Pakistan and the traction for independent Kashmir increases, we will lose Kashmir, because becoming an independent country is very easy. East Timor did not join another country. South Sudan did not join another country. Other than being Christians, they wanted independence. Independence is always easier. Please recognize the problem that we want to be a territory of Pakistan. And the day Kashmiris give up, they will be independent. I have so many soldiers who hear this are miffed and they get angry. But what's the use of having, dreams or information which is not reality based. Even youngsters and youth in AJK is now extremely angry. Post 5th August, JKLF, which we, I mean, like, you know, they have 2,000 to 3,000 votes. They contest elections against me. Like, you know, they have become this huge famous political party, and so many youth have joined them. Before 5th August 2019, they were just, you know, a faction of separatists who were saying, you know, Kashmir should be liberated, neither this and neither that, and people were like, you know, shut up, what are you talking about? But today, the youth, they're extremely angry that nothing was really done. No action was taken. The youth who went towards LOC were stopped. हमने खुद भी नहीं कुछ करना, हमने किसी और को भी कुछ नहीं करने देना, और फिर हमने ये भी कहना कि कश्मीरी कुछ करते नहीं. आप फैसला कर दें कि कुछ करने का मतलब क्या होता है. And why am I not just mentioning the female gender? Because women are equally standing shoulder to shoulder with these men. Women are not of those वो पुराने ज़माने की caregivers अब नहीं रही. They are fighting. They also throw stones. All the photos that you see are now gender balanced. They are writing about it. They're good journalists. Rafto Peace Award. I mean, of course, they were Nobel Peace Prize to Kashmiriyon ko dene se rahe. पता नहीं कब उनको पता चलेगा. But Rafto is also a Norwegian-based organization, and they gave Peace Award to 2 Kashmiri individuals, Parvez Imroz and Parveena Ahmed. This woman whose son was a special child was taken away from her over 2 decades ago, and she never found out where he is. But what she does is she helps other parents whose children have disappeared. And here once again, and this is what I have seen with my own eyes, and I've heard it. When at any international conference, Pakistanis get afraid when they are talking about, you know, Kashmir. Why? Because someone is going to ask about Balochistan. Now, what is this problem about Balochistan? Balochistan is a province. Why are Pakistani speakers so scared? Oh, हमसे बलोचिस्तान का सवाल पूछ लेंगे. हम बहुत ज़्यादा human rights की बात नहीं कर सकते. We need the baggage, the additional burden that we have decided to carry upon ourselves without really understanding why the baggage is there should not be a reason for shunning or sort of, you know, being pussyfooted about Kashmir. You cannot afford to do that. Why hasn't Pakistan said that Balochistan is an integral part of Pakistan? If Modi can call us their integral part when we never belong to them, what stops Pakistan? So Pakistan has to be a little more brave in its rhetoric. People who represent and go out and speak, be it people from AJK, be it from Pakistan, be it the parliamentarians, for God's sakes, give them some kind of, short notes so that they can actually talk about what is really going on, because they don't. And this has what has created confusion. Kashmiri confused नहीं है. जो उनके बारे में बात कर रहे होते हैं, उन्हें चूंकि पता नहीं होता कश्मीरियों की, तो confusion वो फैला रहे होते हैं. No matter how many different political parties we might have, we have never accepted that we are okay with India. None of our political parties, none of our representatives, be it Ali Gillani, be it Yasin Malik, be it Mir Wise, and everyone else, we have never said कि नहीं हमारे लिए India ठीक है. We might have difference of opinion of how we will achieve our final goal, but we have never ever said that we are okay with India. And please stick to that one unified stance of Kashmiris. I always hear that Kashmiris to confuse है, उन्हें पता नहीं उन्हें क्या चाहिए. भाई हम नहीं confuse. मसला ये कि आपको पता नहीं चल रहा कि कौन क्या कह रहा है और उसमें जो binding force क्या है. Everyone wants India out. It's the women and the men and the children and the people. It is a people's problem. It is a political problem. It is a territorial problem. It is a legal problem. We are never prepared. We are firefighters. Pakistan has always been firefighter. We know what India wants, and India wants a war. It keeps moving here and there. And, for the next elections, we can expect another Balakot. We can expect another Pulwama. Because as big as an achievement is to have a Shiv Ram temple at the spot of Babri Masjid, they're doing such horrific actions that they need to, they need to show that they're slapping Pakistan to gain popularity again. Pakistan is the best punching bag for India. Pakistanis also need to remember that जब उन्हें बहुत पीस आया हुआ होता है, उन्हें बहुत ज़्यादा ट्रेड आई हुई होती है, बहुत ज़्यादा इकोनॉमी आई हुई होती है, please do remember you are a punching bag for India. Either punch back or at least get angry about it. And so this is men and women of Kashmir who are asking you that you need to pull up your socks, pants while you're at it, and get your actions straight and fight with us. Fight does not mean a nuclear war. Fight also does not mean that India and Pakistan go to war. But that does mean that do fight at all the levels, at every levels, and never give up, because we can't. But if Pakistan does give up, Kashmiris will always think of other options. And so please do not also call Kashmiris traitors just because they are considering other options. These are desperate people, and they have the right to take up any means that is necessary to achieve their freedom. And we will, inshallah. Thank you.
Farzana, you are on mute.
I said thank you.
Okay.
I'm done.
It was so enthralling that I could not actually figure out that you were done. Thank you so much. I'm extremely grateful, Farzana, for your youth belies the strength that you have in you. And I think that is the resilience and the strength that we can find in every Kashmiri, whether from this side of the fence or from the other side of the fence. I'm extremely grateful to you for your candid comments and for these thought-provoking things that you have said, which are extremely hard-hitting, but which are true and that need to be focused up into. I would, because we are slightly running late of time, I would remind the other two of our speakers, which is kind of an injustice on my part, to please be specific about the time span. However, we have two highly distinguished speakers, Dr. Javaid Hayat Sahab with us. Sir, I would appreciate if you can kindly switch on your mic and if you can be visible to us, we would be extremely grateful to have you be visible. Dr. Javaid Hayat Saab earned his PhD in political science from Germany in 2014. He holds 2 master's degree in peace, conflict, and development studies from Spain as well as from Punjab. Dr. Hayat originally hails from Azad Jammu and Kashmir and has an in-depth understanding of the region's history, people, and politics. He has been involved in various grassroots non-governmental initiatives, various other aspects that we are familiar with. Dr. Javaid has also recently written a book which has been published from the Oxford University Press on the Kashmir issue. Without further ado, Dr. Javaid Sahab, the floor is yours, or the virtual space is yours.
Thank you very much. My advance apology for my weird sound quality, because it's almost 5 a.m. here in Canada. And since I have made a commitment that I will join this program, so I couldn't sleep whole night, and I'm waiting. And disadvantage being at the last, as a last speaker, you can see, you can feel from my voice. But before going further, I would definitely like to appreciate what Mr. Khokar said. Very impressive and thought-provoking lecture he has given to us. And Farzana also highlighted some very bitter realities that we have to accept. But to begin with, thank you very much for providing me opportunity to interact with you all at this critical time of history, when the state of Jammu and Kashmir is at the crossroad. I think a lot has been written and discussed about revocation of Article 370 and 335A. And I will not go into details. However, I would like to highlight few points and will try to avoid repeating what other speakers have said already, but would like to endorse excellent citation that those were shared by the Honorable Minister, Dr. Mazari, and thought-provoking discussion talk by by Mr. Khokar. So I would like to endorse what they have said before about the illegal action taken by India on August 5th, 2019, and subsequent brutal use of force in the Valley of Kashmir. Um, However, I would like to mention that by giving too much focus to Article 370, we are consciously or unconsciously sidelining the actual case of people of Kashmir, which is based on a universal principle of right to self-determination. Just imagine if the Indian Supreme Court declared revocation of Article 370 null and void and asked the government of India to restore the status of Jammu and Kashmir, do you think the issue of Kashmir will be resolved? I believe an obvious answer to this question is no. Why? Because Jammu Kashmir is a recognized disputed territory by the United Nations whose future status is yet to be decided. Therefore, I would like to emphasize that our focus should remain on the right to self-determination under UN resolution, which was promised by the international community to hold a free and fair plebiscite in the all divided and disputed part of Jammu and Kashmir, and it was agreed by both India and Pakistan. However, we must be ready and open to any negotiated settlement by using conflict resolution approaches and their applicabilities, which seems not possible without the involvement of third party facilitative mediation, and which India has never accepted. Conflict resolution process requires, among many other things, consent of the parties to the dispute, which is not the case, particularly since the Modi came into power in India. Despite this, initiatives and intervention should be continued for sustainable peace and to avoid war in the region, and this may lead to an acceptable solution for the Kashmiris across the ceasefire line and for Pakistan and India. I have been observing closely the response by the government of Pakistan since August 2019. And in my humble opinion, government of Pakistan was not ready to respond to the Indian action, even though the government of Pakistan knew the ambitious agenda of the Modi-led BJP. And please don't forget that during the election campaign, BJP had clearly expressed their future design and possible course of action with regard to Jammu and Kashmir. However, the response by the government of Pakistan showed us that she don't have any plan B, which further clearly demonstrated that the policymakers in Pakistan had not done any scenario planning or scenario analysis in response to the possible action of Indian government related to Jammu and Kashmir. Let me say this loudly and clearly, that the people of Pakistan are the one who always provided unconditional support to the Kashmiri freedom struggle. And Pakistan, as a state, is the only state in the world which, as history indicates, went beyond at several occasions to support Kashmiris and their right to self-determination. In the aftermath of August 2019, Pakistan's intervention at the United Nations Security Council, with the help of China, are praiseworthy, but they went futile and failed to bring desired outcome. As you are well aware of the fact that nation states have their geopolitical and economic interest. As a result of globalization and increasing economic interdependence, nation states have to secure their interests through economic diplomacy to achieve their foreign policy objectives or goals. India has successfully used economic diplomacy to refrain the international community from the Kashmir conflict. And we have witnessed a clear restraint by the Arab countries, even the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, which were close allies of Pakistan in the recent past. Except Turkey and China, the response from the other countries was passive and they were trying to maintain neutrality and were referring back to Shimla Agreement, which emphasized for bilateral approach, which is proven failed approach since the Shimla Agreement between India and Pakistan to resolve the Kashmir issue. Allow me to say that in comparison to Indian foreign policy, despite its geostrategic location, Pakistan's foreign policy lacks innovative ways of exploiting its strengths to provide meaningful diplomatic support to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And this evidently proved after August 5th Indian action and subsequent response by the international community, especially restrained by the Arab world. What Indian government wanted to do since long, they have done last year, and she continued to do so. Now it is our turn to look for alternate avenues and possible scenarios. Kashmiris needs more practical support from Pakistan rather than symbolic at this time. There can be many choices or possible scenarios. In my opinion, the people of state of Jammu and Kashmir across the ceasefire line are left with few choices. One choice can be to restore the representative character of Azad Kashmir government and let it advance the diplomatic intervention at the international level to seek for right to self-determination. This can be an ideal scenario, but it cannot be done without the consent and involvement of the government of Pakistan. And I'm afraid if the government of Pakistan will allow this to happen. Kashmiri diaspora, another option and scenario, should or can establish a government in exile and continue diplomatic effort. This also can be a possible and potential scenario, but requires a lot of financing and unity in Kashmiri diaspora. If I have correctly remember, a former ambassador of Pakistan, Ashraf Jahangir Qazi, has written about this after Indian action last year in 2019. And finally, that is not an option, but willy-nilly, maybe they have to accept the status quo and existing division and establish a de jure relationship with their respective host states, namely India and Pakistan. I think both the nation states moving towards this direction, though in a different manner. India in a more organized way and by use of brutal force, and Pakistan apparently willy-nilly, but indeed after accepting the ground realities, though gradually. Finally, let me say that sustainability of any possible scenario or solution is mainly depend on the people of Jammu and Kashmir, as the conflict transformation approach tells us that a win-win solution or a sustainable solution must come from and within. What can be the way forward? I believe government of Pakistan should take the initiative and rethink her foreign policy fundamentals towards Kashmir and Kashmiris. It requires a paradigm shift away from traditional state-centric approach to people-centric approach, enabling Kashmiris to present their indigenous narrative at the forefront of diplomatic interventions will put Pakistan in a more advantageous diplomatic position. An inclusive indigenous narrative of the people, by the people, and for the people of Kashmir across the de facto ceasefire line is the only way forward, and it may bring fruits and support from the international community. I believe that an inclusive narrative and the right direction are two important components or elements among several others for the success of any people's resistance movement, which is persistently missing from the entire discourse of the people resistance movement in Kashmir. Therefore, as a last comment, I must say that we must stop beating around the bushes if we are really serious to reach to a set goal or destination. I look forward to listening your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hayat. You by no means were the last speaker, and we are extremely grateful for you to take time out at 5 o'clock in the morning to join us, which shows your commitment to the cause. And that definitely makes it a must read for us all to go purchase and read your latest book that I mentioned, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Polity, Politics and Power Sharing, which has been published by the OUP in 2020. Thank you so much, sir. Very kind of you. With that, we come to our last speaker for the day. That is Dr. Raja Keyser Ahmed. Dr. Raja Keyser is an assistant professor at the School of Politics and IR, Quaid-i-Azam University. He has previously been a research scholar at the Columbia University, research associate at the University of Nottingham, and he's also been a Euric scholar at the Institute of Comparative Federalism, Italy. Dr. Keyser has authored 2 books, and he has also served as a senior lecturer at the Department of Defense and Diplomatic Studies, Padma Jinnah University. With that, I hand over the space to Dr. Keyser. Kindly, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you, Dr. Salma Malik, for rather a very superfluous introduction. I'm really humbled. Since a lot has been already said, so I'll be trying to be very precise, and I'll be trying not to distract the original discussion and deliberation on the said matter. So, as I was being told that I'll be speaking on to this matrix of Kashmir conflict with particular reference to Azad Kashmir. So when we tend to look at this contemporary landscape, which has developed in the aftermath of the Article 370's revocation, one thing which is primarily irking to my understanding and to my contention is that we have primarily overemphasized this focus point of Article 370. When we took August 5th, 2019 as the focus point, we somehow assumed that things were all right on August 4th. So that is not the case. When we say that Kashmiris are under siege for the past 1 year, this is not a reality. Kashmiris are under siege for last 40 years in particular, and for last 200 years in general. So this Kashmir conflict, or this resistance movement of Kashmiris, it is 200 years old. It is basically, Kashmiris, they have been repressed and subjugated over the centuries. So the resistance movement, it even predates the creation of Pakistan. So please don't very much pivot your discussion and conversation on August 5th. Talk about Kashmir conflict in general, because it is a living irony. It is an agony. It is something, Kashmiris are the recipient of the first mass blinding ever in the history of mankind. So, and when we say of the egregious human rights violations which have been committed in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, it is not what Pakistan states. It is not what is the rhetoric of the Kashmiris. It has been affirmed by, it has been appropriated by the United Nations in 2018 and had been reaffirmed in 2019. So now this is an open secret. This is an open reality that Kashmiris are subject to a widespread repression. There is a gender violence. There is gender disparity. There is this conflict. It has a multifaceted dimensions. So what is even more ironical is the response which has been shown and which has been demonstrated in the aftermath of August 5th. Because as I said, that what we have been unable to fathom is that our trilogy of diplomatic, moral, and political sport was quite all right till August 4th, 2019, but is now obsolete and redundant after August 5th, 2019. Reason being that Indians, they have changed the reality of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir uncharacteristically. They have downgraded the status of Jammu and Kashmir to a union territory, and they have bifurcated the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And now this apparently is the de jure reality. So when we only present Kashmir as an issue of human rights violation, we are not serving justice to this cause. Reason being, this is the high time where we need to expand the horizons of this conflict. Please stop referring this as a dispute. A dispute has a territorial connotation. Kashmir is not a dispute. Kashmir is a conflict. It has a multifaceted context. It is something which is beyond the scope of a dispute. I think this is the high time where we need to pursue this case under the international law of armed resistance, because Kashmiris, they are facing an annihilation at the hands of armed forces and the most militarized zone in the world. This is a reality which is undeniable. This is the high time where we need to proactively take up this cause under the right to protect norm, which has been adopted by the United Nations in 2005. When we say that we are the ambassador of Kashmiris and we are going to take it up as an issue, and we are going to take it to the rest of the world, so only rhetoric and polemic is not going to suffice or is not going to ameliorate the abject miseries which Kashmiris are plunged into. Like Farzana has mentioned, Kashmiri women are getting raped, Kashmiri youth is getting killed, Kashmiri people are getting blinded. This is the reality. And when we talk of the Kashmir, and we use this word Kashmir, I mean, perhaps we usually take up it as in a very inhuman pretext. Reason being, it is more about Kashmiris. Please talk about Kashmiris. It is their right to live with dignity. 20 million Kashmiris, their right to live with dignity is more important. Don't refer it to a territorial connotation. I would rather applaud the very candid discussion of Ambassador Riaz Khokar, who has said, yes, our response has been beyond appalling. We must admit that we had not prepared to face this. We had not done our scenario planning. We didn't know what we will do if India will revoke. Like Ambassador Abdul Basit, he keeps on mentioning that since 2014, he was cautioning every government that the Indians are going to revoke Article 370, but none took it seriously. Now the point is where the discussion would have been to incrementally engage all the conflict geographies of Jammu and Kashmir, including Azad Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan Valley, and to have an indigenous inclusive narrative. We are distracting people in the useless debate of 14th Amendment into the constitution of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and we are referring to the GB order of 2018. I mean, what is this? Something I guess we need to rethink. We need to make a serious introspection of our policy pursuits. This is not serving our cause. This is the high time where we need to have, or we need to incrementally engage all the conflict geographies. Reason being, our existing narrative, it only encompasses valley. We have conveniently excluded Jammu, Ladakh, and other territories. And you see that the new map which has been circulated and promulgated has also not included Aksai Chin and has not included Ladakh territories. It in itself speaks volume of our pick and choose policy. I think this is the time to develop an inclusive indigenous narrative. Perhaps, pardon me saying this, but this kind of condescending attitude of not letting Kashmiris speak for themselves and continuously snubbing them and saying them that, well, why are you telling this to the world that you are dying when we are telling this to the world that you are dying? So this attitude perhaps needs to be called off. Let the victims speak for themselves. Let the Kashmir being portrayed as not in a reduced matrix, but rather into a broader conflict. And when we say that, like Farzana was pointing out, when we say that human rights violations in Kashmir, we use it as a phraseology. This phraseology has its own underpinnings. The gender violence, mass blinding, this armed resistance and extrajudicial killings, all of these things, they are the specialized domains under the pretext of the human rights. So when we just say to the world that, well, there are the egregious human rights violations in Kashmir, so it in itself speaks the superficiality and the hollowness of our discourse, that we are perhaps disconnected from the reality. The third important thing is that we have had developed a kind of mistrust over Kashmiris, and we do not let them to somehow demonstrate their own difference of opinion or their own dissent on the issues. Well, in past 1 year, I would like to ask to all the panelists and to even the people, and I leave it as a question as well, on what occasions the government of Pakistan has tried to engage the government of Azad Kashmir as the representative of this conflict. So this is perhaps something which seriously needs to be reviewed. This is where, I mean, जो इफ्तिखार आरिफ की एक नज़म है कि ये जो मोड़ आया है इस पर हमें रुक कर कई बातों को सोचने की जरूरत है. तो ये this is the high time where perhaps we needs to rethink, we needs a re-evaluation, we need to do a scenario planning, and at the same time we need to incrementally engage all the conflict geographies. I mean, how would you persuade the pundits of the Jammu and Ladakh to be the adherent of this narrative which we are upholding? So it is indeed, I mean, on certain counts, there are certain picks which needs to be applauded, that Kashmir issue has been internationalized, it has been brandished, it has been taken to the world capitals. The international media outlets who used to refrain commenting and publicizing stories on Kashmir, they are doing editorials on Kashmir. All of these things, they are indeed praiseworthy, but they do not any way the credit goes to our diplomatic efforts. This is all the credit of the Kashmiris, that they have shunned away the image of terrorists and militants. Now it is a freedom struggle, and it has been recognized as a freedom struggle. Now no one labels the Kashmiri is as the terrorists or this. No one labels, even from the international media, calls this movement as this terrorist struggle. So all of these are the picks which needs to be taken up. And there are two things which are very important regarding any long-standing conflict. One is direction, and second are goals. And we are little obscure on both of them. We don't know what are our goals, and secondly, what is our direction. So I think this is the high time where we need to review our policies, and this is a high time where we need to put our trust behind Kashmiris and let them speak for themselves. When victims would speak for themselves, it would make a real-time difference. I thank you all for your patience. Regards.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raja Keyser Sahab, for your comments and your thought-provoking things that you have raised. We have with us this stellar panel of speakers who have looked at the various dimensions of Kashmir very holistically. If Ambassador Khokar was looking at the international response, Ms. Farzana looked at the gendered and human rights perspective against the occupied and oppressed people. Raja Keyser Sahab has given a very, very candid perspective on the internal dynamics and how the internal response to all this should happen. And Ambassador Arif Kamal Sahab, you have provided us with a very holistic perspective on what is happening in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And of course, with Dr. Javaid Sahab providing us with aspects towards conflict resolution, and Justice Gillani focusing on the legal perspective. We have tried to make this particular special webinar as holistic as possible to look at various dimensions. The purpose of the Dean, Faculty Social Sciences, was to give a very candid, a very on the dot, in real term perspective of what Kashmir issue is all about, and not to mince words, not to sugar candy it, and try and bring out the best thing. Before I hand over the mic to Professor Dr. Nazir Hussain Saab for his concluding remarks, as well as concluding the webinar on whatever terms that he wants to, I have posted this entire list of questions that have been asked on the various fora, WhatsApp as well as the Facebook, and on our personal telephone messages. And I must at this point really appreciate the efforts of my silent colleagues who have given me the front line, but have made very hard work to make today's webinar an extreme success. Najib Sahab from Power 99, who has been instrumental in the publicity as well as live streaming. Najib Sahab, if you are well dressed, we would appreciate if you can show your face to us. And I would also like to appreciate the effort, thank enormously Syed Ikram Ali Sahab, if you can please join us briefly if it is possible for you, and of course Nadeem Yasir Sahab, who has been who is the PR of Quaid-i-Azam University and the silent support and force behind this. So I would really appreciate two of my colleagues who have totally given me the entire publicity limelight today and making this thing an extreme success. God bless you all. And Sir Nazir, the mic is yours, the space is yours, and the ultimate decision is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salma. Very well conducted and very crisp and good conclusion you have given. I must thank all the panelists. Our purpose, in fact, is served. We have taken a very different perspective. People have spoken their heart out. And just a news for all of you. On the 3 live streams, more than 500 people have watched and listened to you. More than 500. This is the success of your true heart out about Kashmir. And I'm glad that we have not gone into the usual narrative of the government or the people. This was the purpose and which has been served very well. There are also very learned, silent listeners to this group who were there with us all the time. Asfar Hassan with us, Air Marshal Ashfaq Amin Arai with us, and I hope he is General Asad Durrani were with us, and many more who were all the time with us listening to you, and probably some of the Khilai Makhluk was also there to listen some of your basic fundamental issues which will be reported to them. And of course, Ambassador Riaz Khokar's issue of full spectrum, I hope all strategic studies students like me would be understanding the full spectrum. And inshallah, when the COVID-19 is over, we'll have an in-person meeting with Ambassadors Khokar Sahab and would like to know the true meaning of the full spectrum perspective. I thank all my colleagues, my organizer, my vice chancellor, who have given me the confidence and the trust. And I look forward to the feedback which will be given to you. And inshallah, we'll have a brief on this. We'll be sharing with you. And all the recording is available. If you need, we'll be providing you. I thank you once again, all of you, for your very thought-provoking discussions and expose on the different matter. And last but not least, very pretty and very beautiful Dr. Salma, for all your good conduct and very mature dealing of the. I'm extremely sorry to the viewers for their questions. It is more than 2 hours, and I'm grateful to the patience and the forbearance of my speakers. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I once again thank our distinguished speakers, the keynote speakers, for their patience, for their candid views and comments, to Dr. Professor Nazir Hussain Saab, Vice Chancellor Quaid-i-Azam University, Professor Syed Mohammad Ali Saab, and all of our people who tuned in all across. God bless. अल्लाह आज़ाद कश्मीर को मुकम्मल आज़ादी अता करे और अल्लाह करे कि हमारी आज की जो अचीवमेंट है, जो बहुत छोटी अचीवमेंट है, बट कश्मीर की आज़ादी के लिए इसमें एक मोमेंटम बिल्ड हो और हम इसके कुछ ना कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट कर सकें. आमीन एंड खुदा हाफिज़. अस्सलाम वालेकुम.